Heavenly Father, God, I just pray over this portion of the service, God. Father, I pray, God, that as your word goes forth, Father, that it would touch hearts and minds, God. That, Father, your word, with all its authority, with all its power, would minister to those that are here today, God, myself included, Father. And Jesus, I pray that we would see you clearly, that we would exalt your name, God, that you would be lifted high. God, that you would just pour out your spirit for the next few minutes upon each and every person here, God. Father, and I pray that whether it be a demonstration that we can all see, God, or whether it be an inner demonstration, Father, that just the healing balm of Gilead would flow in this service today, Father. God, touch hearts, touch minds, touch bodies, in Jesus' name. Amen. You would turn with me to Genesis chapter 32. Genesis chapter 32, beginning verse 21. And the title of my sermon today is Wrestling with God. Genesis 32, beginning verse 21. Verse 21 reads, "So the present passed on before him, while he himself spent that night in the camp. Now he arose that same night and took his 2 wives and his 2 maids and his 11 children and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. He then took them and sent them across the stream, and he sent across whatever he had. Then Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak." I just want to stop here for a minute. Set the background for the story. Jacob, who is the great usurper, the great supplanter, the one that stole the birthright from Esau. It's this Jacob that we're talking about. And what's happened is Jacob is gone. He's worked for Laban, and he's gotten married, and has increased his wealth, and he's kind of, God has blessed him abundantly, and he's going back to the land that he came from. But before he gets there, he has to deal with his brother Esau. And so this is a kind of a prelude to when he meets Esau, but he sent ahead a bunch of things and a bunch of gifts and a bunch of offerings, and he kept his family back. And you notice that in the middle of the night, he gets up and he sends his family over ahead of him. What happens is that he ends up being alone, and remember the title of the sermon is Wrestling with God, and so today I want us to understand that there's times when we're going to wrestle with the enemy, just flat out. We know it's a force against us. We know it's an evil force. We know that if all hell itself could come against, it would. There's times where we're going to wrestle that way. But then there's times where we just wrestle, and we wrestle, and we wrestle it. Doesn't seem like it's evil. Doesn't seem like it's from the enemy. It's just maybe it's an inner wrestling, maybe it's an outer wrestling. We don't know. It might lead to restlessness. We don't know. But there are times where we're going to have to wrestle with God. And the thing about this is that Jacob was all alone. Now, he kind of put himself in that position, but the understanding of this is that he was alone so that he could pray. It's not just that he was wrestling physically with somebody, it's that he was wrestling spiritually. And Jacob doesn't know what Esau's going to do. Jacob doesn't know if Esau's going to say, "You, brother of mine, that stole my birthright, that got the blessing that was meant for me, that took the very livelihood that was mine, you come before me, I'm going to take you out." He doesn't know this. He's perplexed about it. He's worried about it. He's sitting here, he's all by himself, and I can tell you that even in a crowded room, you can be alone. It's something we don't talk about very often. It's something that we don't deal with very often. I would say at this point that Jacob is probably closer to depression than not. I would say that he's very worried. He's very anxious. He does not know what tomorrow holds. He wants to be by himself. Have you ever been there? And I know that I just said the D word, and I didn't mean to upset anybody, but it's okay to say depression from the pulpit. Sometimes you get depressed. Sometimes it's too much. Sometimes you don't know what to do. And notice in the midst of this, God doesn't send him this beautiful chorus of angels to sing these lovely hymns to put him to sleep and to rest him. He doesn't send down these huge arms to just rock him comfortably until he falls asleep and assure him everything's okay. God literally comes against him. Not for his harm. I want to say that at the beginning. Not for his harm. But in your bulletin, there's a quote by John Bloom, and it says, "There are multiple blessings in the wrestling. You may not need soft words of comfort. You may not need to be left alone with your thoughts. You may not need sleep. You may not even need a healthy hip. What you need is God's blessing." And here's the thing is, what Jacob needed wasn't a night to just spend worrying and crying and not getting anywhere. It wasn't, he didn't need to just psych himself up. What Jacob needed was an encounter with God.
Yes.
And notice that it doesn't say that Jacob approached God to wrestle him. It says that in verse 24, "Then Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak." The understanding is that while Jacob was alone, a man came to wrestle against him. And I don't know about you, again, we talked last week about sometimes we hear these Sunday school stories and we take the humanness out of them. But if I'm all alone, some dude just randomly appears, for one, I'm going to get scared because I don't like it when people randomly appear in the middle of the night. But secondly, if he's coming against me, he starts wrestling, I'm going to think that he has some pretty bad motives towards me. I don't imagine somebody just showing up and wrestling with you in the middle of the night because they like you, because they just couldn't wait to see you. I'm sure that can happen in some places, but imagine that you're Jacob, and imagine that you're in a moment of absolute desperation. You don't know what's going to happen. But instead of everything getting better, you have a new opposition. The thing is that what God is doing here is God is working in Jacob something that only can happen this way. Okay, Jacob has had the blessing. He's done things. He himself has done very good for himself.
It's true.
But he is still yet changed to who God wants him to be. Going a little bit further in verse 25, it says, "When he saw that he had not prevailed against him," when he saw that he had not prevailed against him, he touched the socket of his thigh, so the socket of Jacob's thigh was dislocated while he wrestled with him. I don't know what it's like to have dislocated hip. I don't. I imagine it's pretty painful. Again, we have a situation where an angel, a man, it's understood from Hosea 12 that this is the pre-incarnate Christ that is wrestling with Jacob. And so this being comes against him, and as Jacob's wrestling, again, to add hurt to opposition, the angel touches him and his thigh goes out. It doesn't get better right away. This is not some beautiful miracle story about how God just granted Jacob these super awesome muscles that kind of look like mine, and let him just have this strength of 10 men to defeat the angel. Maybe. Yes. Sometimes I wonder if my humor is just wasted. And I appreciate the encouragement. That was good. But he didn't do that. And sometimes that's what we look for when we come to God. That's what we look for when we're in desperation. We come to God desperate. We say, "God, just make everything okay." Sometimes God doesn't need to make everything okay. Sometimes God needs to take us a little bit further into the struggle to receive the blessing. So I want to encourage you today that if you're in a struggle, understand that when you pray and you ask that God's will be done, then you trust that His will be done. Yes. If it doesn't get better right away, trust that. If there's something that you're just struggling with, I can, like Jessica said this week, when I woke up Monday and was in pain and everything happened, I told her, I said, this is literally the straw that almost broke the camel's back. We just didn't think it would take anymore. It has been too much, too quick to roll. But the beautiful thing is that in that struggle, God also refreshed and renewed me. And I can't explain it any other way than I didn't have any choice but to lay there and rest. I didn't have my computer, I didn't have my Bible, I didn't have my school books, I didn't have any of that stuff. All I could do is lay there and realize, one, again, how truly weak we all are, but two, the goodness of God. And the presence of God in the midst of adversity. And coming out of it, I'm renewed, I'm refreshed, I'm ready to go. I'm not sitting here thinking, thanks God, that was great. I'm saying, thanks God, that was great. You, in the midst of that adversity, you poured in. We didn't expect to get hit with DJ. I know fully well that in that struggle, God is in it. I get that. I understand that. And that's what helps. So even in this situation here where Jacob gets his thigh dislocated, it goes further, and it goes in verse 26. He says, then he said, let me go, for the dawn is breaking. This is the angel that's speaking. But he said, talking about Jacob, I will not let you go unless you bless me. Church, what if we struggle with God enough that in the midst, when God is saying, hold on, let me go, we say, no, I've come this far. I've walked this hard. I've struggled this much. I will not let you go until I get my blessing. See, we take a passive approach to God, and we say, God, if it's your will, just bless this or bless me here. What if we struggled with God? What if we said, listen, I'm going to seek you in prayer until I get that blessing that I need. I'm going to worship and praise no matter what I feel like until I get your blessing. I'm not talking about money and cars and airplanes. I'm talking about a spiritual blessing. One that is born through struggle. One that, we'll read here in a minute, the blessing changes Jacob forever. It changes him so much that he's no longer called Jacob. He's now called Israel. Israel does not mean supplanter or usurper. See, God knows that for Jacob has always got off easy. He got off with his mother helping him to steal Esau's birthright. He got off with the Lord miraculously blessing the flocks, that Laban's flocks decreased and Jacob's flocks increased. He's had a life of never really having to struggle for anything that he has. But God says, hold on. When it comes to me, it doesn't work that way. You're not going to get it the easy way. It's not going to be where everything just goes the way you want it. You are going to encounter me. There's going to be a struggle, and there will be a blessing in that struggle. Now think about that. Now, in the Old Testament times, a name meant much more than it does now. People can go to the courthouse and change their name and be wherever they want to be. Names don't really mean now what they did then. Back then, your name defined you. Your name mattered. And so for God to struggle with him and to change his name, there's a whole story that comes out of Israel, of Jacob's name being changed. The Israelites, all the way through, all the way down. Eventually you come to Jesus. It begins here. Names matter. And the beautiful thing is that in no way at all does it say that God came against him to hurt him. But God did wrestle with him. Going a little bit further, it says here in verse 27, so he said to him, what is your name? And he said, Jacob. He said, your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with men and have prevailed. See, there's something beautiful that comes when you strive with man and you prevail. But when you strive with God and you prevail, it's a beautiful thing. And again, I just want to shatter this notion that somehow God is only God when everything is going right. I don't know about you, but I learned the best lessons and the deepest lessons usually when there's a certain amount of pain or struggle involved. If I just get these understandings from osmosis, I don't get them. They don't sink in. When I learn a lesson through pain and struggle, my goodness, does it ever sink in? And so I want to encourage you today that whatever struggle you're in, if it's a struggle from the enemy, God's got it. If you're struggling with God, God's still got it.
Yes.
He's got it no matter what.
Amen.
But maybe don't get so discouraged when you're struggling and you're praying, you don't know why God won't just take everything away, because maybe, just maybe, you got to struggle a little bit longer to get that blessing from God.
Yes.
A little bit further, it says, then Jacob asked him and said, please tell me your name. But he said, why is it that you ask my name? And he blessed him there. Church, struggle with God long enough to get the blessing. Don't give up.
Yes.
Don't give up. We know that no matter what happens in this life, no matter what we struggle through, no matter who we lose along the way, no matter what happens to our bodies, no matter what happens to our careers, our finances, no matter what, the blessing is yet to come. I don't know about you, but when the Bible tells me in Revelation that He will wipe away every tear, that there will be no more pain, no more death, no more sorrow, that is a promise I cannot wait to receive.
Amen.
It's a beautiful promise. It's a promise yet to come, but it's a promise that we can build our hope and our foundation on because it comes from God. And God does not lie. He will fulfill that promise.
Yes.
Hang in there. Struggle just a little bit longer. Verse 30 says, so Jacob named the place Peniel, for he said, I have seen God face to face, yet my life has been preserved. We know that later on, I believe Deuteronomy, Moses says that nobody can see God face to face and live. So we understand that this is not God the Father in His full glory that He's seeing. It's an angel of the Lord, the pre-incarnate Christ that He's wrestling with. But even Jacob understands that in that struggle, God had the power to take his life. And He didn't. Because God wanted to teach him a lesson. And so, I want us to understand today that even in the struggle, what you have committed to God will be preserved. He'll keep it. Well, a little bit further. Verse 31 says, Now the sun rose upon him just as he crossed over Penuel, and he was limping on his thigh. Therefore, to this day, the sons of Israel do not eat the sinew of the hip, which is on the socket of the thigh, because he touched the socket of Jacob's thigh in the sinew of the hip. I don't know about you, but that's kind of where that story stops, and it moves on in verse 33, talking about how he looks up and Esau's coming. It doesn't seem like a victorious story to me when Jacob leaves, renamed to Israel, but forever limping. It's always going to be a sign of weakness. Wherever he goes, people are going to know that something happened, that he's not quite right, that there's an issue there. But yet, that issue is the sign that he wrestled with God and was blessed. And does it not just shatter this idea that we are only blessed when everything goes right, and we're only blessed when everything goes good? Church, we're blessed because we have the unique ability to encounter God, to be His children. That Christ came and lived a sinless life, that He died on the cross for our sins, that He took and bore the punishment of God's wrath so that we could stand justified before the Lord. I don't know about you, but that, to me, is enough of a blessing. It's enough of a blessing. To understand that I don't have to just live this life with all its struggle and toils and trouble and then move on to nothing. Or that I don't have to just struggle and have no help in this life. And maybe if I was good enough, or if I did enough good things to maybe get something better in the next life. To understand that the very Son of God bought us, redeemed us, purchased us to bring us forever with Him is a blessing. Hold on to that.
Amen.
Hold on to that. You will struggle in this life. Jesus is absolutely clear about that in John. In this world you will have many troubles. And that's the end of the verse, right? It says, but be of good heart, take cheer, for I have overcome the world.
Yes. Amen.
He has overcome. He will bless you. And so, it won't be long today. I just want you to understand as you leave today that don't get to the point in your struggle that you think God has left you. Understand that God is struggling with you, and that as long as you hold on, your blessing will come.
Yes.
And again, I'm not talking materially. I'm not one of those preachers. I'm talking about the deep things, the things that change us from the inside out. The things that forever, from that day of wrestling with God and receiving that blessing, we are forever changed. Not only on the inside, but in a way that everybody else would see as well. Church, I believe in my spirit that God is moving deeply within this church. I believe it.
Yes.
Not because I have to. I don't have to believe that God is moving to get a pastor. I believe that God is moving because I see Him moving.
Yes.
Because in my prayer time, He is revealing to me that He's moving. The beautiful thing is that let's struggle as a church a little bit longer. Let's not give up.
Amen.
Let's not say, it's just this journey's just getting too hard. I just can't do it anymore. Let's not give up. Let's purpose in our hearts to pursue God, to hold on to Him, everything that we have, and struggle a little bit longer. And as that sun starts to come up, as that dawn begins to rise, the blessing will come.
Yes.
I assure you of that.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.
It's a little bit early. We still have potluck. I apologize if some of you ladies were planning to have your meals done at 12, because they're going to not be quite done. But just for the next few minutes, because we are done early, can we, will be a song that plays, can you just sit quietly and reflect upon where you sit with the Lord? Reflect upon maybe the struggles that you're in, and maybe look at them in new light, with new eyes that understand that God has not left you. He has not forgot you. He has not abandoned you. Even when you're all alone, even when you don't know what tomorrow holds, even when in the midst of being in a bad situation, the struggle increases, God still has not left you. He has not forsaken you. And as Jessica said this morning, we say God is good all the time, and all the time God is good. We say that. But if I have learned one thing over the past year, it's that you can say things you don't really mean. And you can mean things that you don't really say. So, for the next few minutes, and we'll just dismiss at your leisure. If you need to go downstairs, you can, but let's just focus ourselves, maybe allow ourselves to be put back in right perspective with God, that He has control, that He has you, your situation,
Yes.
and the outcome, all of it. Amen?
Amen.